Good morning. Today is Monday, December 2nd. It is 10:02 a.m. and I call this meeting of the Platte County Commission to order. Before we get started, I would like to note that Commissioner Dagmar Wood is now Commissioner Williams. So she got married on Friday, so congratulations. So when Clerk Jared Pruitt calls the roll, then she will be calling Commissioner Williams. So we can avoid any confusion there. We're fortunate this morning to have Pastor Michael Lazio with us. Would you please lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
To do so. Good morning, Commissioners. Michael Lazio, as you said, Bethel House of Prayer. So, just traveling in that vein of Thanksgiving and thankfulness. And I'm going to read a Psalm 32, verse 8 this morning. Just pray into that real quick. And it says, it declares, the Lord saying, I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye upon you. And so as we ponder that passage, I'm just going to pray out of that. So if you join me in prayer. Lord, we trust in your guidance and that you will lead us to the best decisions. And Heavenly Father, as we gather here today, we humbly ask for your presence and your guidance in all that we do. May your wisdom fill our hearts and minds, allowing us to listen attentively to one another and make decisions that reflect your will. Grant us clarity and purpose, respectful dialogue, and a collaborative spirit as we work together towards a positive outcome for the citizens of Platte County. We pray this in your name. Amen. Join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael. First on our agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Frederick?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderburg?
Yes.
The motion carries 3-0. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Clerk, please call the
I think
roll.
we have, is Mr. Zahn going to do his presentation?
I was going to have him do it during office holder comments.
Okay.
Is that okay? Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Frederick?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderburg?
Yes.
That motion carries 3-0. Next on the agenda, business action items. And the first item is a public hearing to amend the budget. We will go ahead and open the public hearing at 10:05 a.m. And here to present is Platte County Auditor Kevin Robinson.
Good morning,
morning.
Commissioners. Kevin Robinson, Platte County Auditor. If you will recall, on November 18th, during session, requested to have this public hearing. The proposed amendments were published and made available on Friday, November 23rd, prior to 10 a.m. There have been no additions or changes to what was proposed. So for the record, the impacted funds and departments include Emergency Management Fund, Sheriff's 911 Telephone Fund, Stormwater Fund, Road Sales Tax Platte City Fund, Road Sales Tax Farley Special Road District Fund, Road Sales Tax Edgerton Fund, Road Sales Tax Fairview Fund, Road Sales Tax Riverside Fund, Road Sales Tax Parkville Special Road District Fund, Parkville Commons, NID Bond Fund, Capital Projects Fund, and then within the general fund, general administration, treasurer, collector, circuit court, prosecuting attorney, sheriff, and transfers. With that, Commissioners, let me take just a moment, walk through a couple things. Before I get started, I would like to hand out one sheet, if it's all right.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Commissioners, before you The first item in this page that I just handed out, which will become part of the record, supplemental page, is for county elections. You'll notice that this is an increase of $223,000 to the 24 budget, and it's noted as additional election costs. Just a couple little background and a little bit of information to make sure there's a clear understanding of what this number represents. Of course, in the county budget, there are two line items, 6510, 6520, which 10 is for the Board of Elections and 65020 is for county elections. The 24 budget reflected $476,000, which represents about 50% of their operating budget. In 24, under county elections, excuse me, the budget represented about $125,000 for the year. So looking into this number to make sure there was a clear understanding, basically expenses associated with county elections fall on the highest level of government where the election is performed, thus the county. It doesn't go. So state stuff falls back to us, federal stuff falls to us. There is at times state reimbursement when they have items on. I can recall a few years ago, we did get a reimbursement from the state. I can't tell you the exact number, but it came in like in February following, I believe it was 4 years ago, following the general election. So while that is anticipated, that's an unknown at this time. Speaking to the Board of Elections, they don't even know what that number that they're going to request from the state is at this point because they have not finalized election costs. But that will be shown then in 25 as miscellaneous revenue going back to the general fund. In 2022, just as a point of reference, we budgeted $200,000 in county elections. It's obviously off cycle, not presidential. Actual year-end expenses came out at $150,000. This year, again, we budgeted $125,000. And at this point, because we have to pre-fund elections to make up for the primary with the two county initiative items that were on there, and then the general election, the Board of Elections has invoiced us this it's a net $223,000 that we had to put into deposit to cover their expenses. For the general election, what I handed to you is basically a pro rata of the expense reports because the community colleges, the city of Platte City and Weatherby all had initiatives on the general election. So what this is showing is what their costs were associated with their participation in the general election. So I just wanted to make sure that there was a pretty good, clear understanding because that is a large number, larger than we've seen. But of course, everybody knows costs have gone up since 4 years ago.
Thank
Any
you.
questions on that, commissioners?
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, I
Mr.
do.
Wood.
So on this pro rata that you gave us, these these bills that we got from MCC, Platte City, Weatherby Lake, is general revenue, our general revenue paying for this?
This is from
ultimately?
the Board of Elections. And this
Okay.
is what they billed them, not us.
Okay, all right.
Good
Got it.
question, ma'am. But yeah, that went to them. This just shows the total estimated split for the general election.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any public comments? Okay, seeing none.
Continuing on, Commissioner. Next, you'll see a couple different things that are payroll related. If you recall in the 24 budget, we had a contingency line item that was the sheriff's for 5 deputies that were held in contingency based on the preliminary criteria of if they hit certain salary numbers that we would move the numbers to move and fund. And they have done that in several situations. So the commission has approved to allocate some of that money to cover costs. So if you look there's $615,000, which is a reduction in that contingency line item, which only left like $4,000 for the 5 deputies loaded salary and benefits. And then you can see about 2/3 of the way down in the top section under general fund, under 1,001, 5,000, 6,000, 6,100, that's other salaries. You can see basically $394,000 is additional salaries the sheriff needed. in the general fund, and then some unanticipated retirement payouts of $43,000 also were used from there. And just to finish that section of this, if you look down in the next section, 1190, excuse me, emergency management, you can see we transferred 16,000 in from that 615, 2,000 to cover overtime salaries, 14,000 to cover other salaries. And then in 2720, Sheriff's 911 telephone fund, again, same thing. In this case, we transferred 163,000 in to cover $163,000 worth of additional salaries. In addition to that, in the payroll-related items, if you recall, this year we transitioned into an off-cycle health insurance. And the commission set aside funding to help that transition for anyone that had elected the HSA. Most of these were able to be covered within the officer department itself. But at the top of this, under the general fund, you'll see there's three offices that needed additional funding, all noted with the HSA contribution. And then down in stormwater, you'll see that also again. Any questions on payroll-related items, sir? Then you'll see a couple new grants, nothing unusual with that. So that jumps us down a little more than halfway down, and we talked about all those road sales districts, special road districts and cities on the transportation tax, starting with 3105-610, which is Platte City, Farley, Edgerton, and Fairview, Riverside, and then Parkville. These items are all related to additional collections. We had to increase the sales to have enough revenue to cover the transfers and disbursements out from the road sales tax that went to these 5 entities. That's what those entities are for closing out the year. Then on next to last is 4450 Parkville Commons, the NID bond fund. This is a $500 increase in bond expense that was not budgeted. If you recall, we had a similar one back in October. That was actually for 4460. This is for 4450 Parkville Commons. The other was the Crooked Road NID. Again, this $500 is covered like the other one was out of the special revenue collections. This is not general fund money covering this expense. Again, it was just an unanticipated item. And this is from the bank. Last item is the reduction in the transfer into Fund 5000 to offset and balance the proposed amendments. With that, I'll gladly answer any questions you have.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, 10:15 a.m., this public hearing is closed, which brings us to action item 2024 CO214. Kevin?
Again, good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Robinson, Platte County Auditor. Before you are proposed budget amendments for the 2024 Commission-approved budget. As stated, the funds and departments impacted by the proposed amendments, again, for the record, are Emergency Management Fund, Sheriff 911, Telephone Fund, Stormwater Fund, and then Platte City, Farley, Edgerton, Fairview, Riverside, and Parkville Special Road Districts, and then Parkville Commons, NIDBOG Fund, Capital Projects, and then various offices under the General Administration, including Treasurer, Collector, Circuit Clerk, Prosecuting Attorney, Sheriff, and transfers. With that, there were no changes to what was proposed and discussed in the public hearing. Respectfully request the proposed amendments as presented.
Move to approve business action item 6A, 2024 CO214, approval of amendments to the 2024 Platte County budget.
Second.
You have a motion and a second on this item. Are there any comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Freighter?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderburg?
Yes.
The motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next on the agenda, 2024 CO213, to be presented by Planning and Zoning Director Daniel Erickson. Morning, Daniel.
Good morning, Commissioners. Daniel Erickson on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Department. This item is a request to rezone submitted by Joe North on behalf of the Quality Hills Farm. She is seeking to rezone 2.5 acres from an existing 250-acre tract off of Middle Road. It's currently zoned ag and R7. This 2.5-acre property has an existing dwelling. They're splitting off that existing dwelling to be sold. In order to do that, they're changing the zoning from ag and R7 to R80 rural single family. This came before the Planning and Zoning Commission at our last hearing. There's public testimony, and ultimately, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended to you to approve this change in zoning. Staff had recommended approval to the Planning Commission.
I move approval of 2024-CO-213 rezoning from AG and R7 to R80 for Quality Hill Farm. Joe Norris.
Second?
We have a motion and a second on this item. Are there any comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Freighter?
Yes,
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
that motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Daniel. And with that, we'll move on to announcements from county office holders and staff. I believe we're going to hear from Platte County Prosecuting Attorney Eric Zahn this morning. Morning, Eric.
Good morning. Thank you, Presiding Commissioner. As you know, Missouri law requires the prosecuting attorney to report every year the number of felonies and misdemeanors filed by my office. So in 2024, the year ending October 31st of 2024, so November 1 of 2023 to October 31st of 2024, my office filed 695 felonies and 7,754 misdemeanors. By way of comparison, from last year, 2023, we filed 661 felonies that year. So that's a 2% increase in the number of felonies filed. And in 2023, my office filed 8,028 misdemeanors. So it's about a 3% reduction in the number of misdemeanors filed. I want to give you a little bit more context on that. If you go back 10 years ago, so 2015, the office filed 478 felonies. That's a 45% increase in those 10 years in the number of felonies filed. Also, by way of context, I want to talk about the increasing complexity of the cases, and I'll do that just by talking about homicides. So our office currently has 21 homicides pending. That's 12 non-vehicular homicides and 9 vehicular homicides. That's a lot. That's more than we've ever had at any one time. Now, those numbers include one special prosecution where my office is serving as special prosecutor in a homicide, a first-degree murder case, actually, in Clay County. The victim of that case was the daughter of a Clay County clerk, and for that reason, the Clay County prosecutor recused himself and asked us to step in and handle that case, and we have done that. They do that occasionally for us as well when we have conflict cases. That number of 12 non-vehicular homicides also includes 2 cases that are still under investigation, in which my office is assisting the Platte County Sheriff's Department in the ongoing investigation of those cases. We expect those cases to be referred to our office in the coming days. So that's 12 rather, non-vehicular homicide cases, many of them murders, some of them first-degree murders, several second-degree murders as well. You know, if I go back all the way to when I first became Platte County prosecuting attorney in 2003, we would sometimes go a year with no homicides in the county. That's no longer the case. Again, that's due in large part to the fact that Platte County has grown significantly since that time. When I first took office, we had fewer than 75,000 residents in the county. Now we're somewhere around 110,000, I think, something like that. So that's part of it. I think it's also reflective of the fact that for a whole variety of reasons that it would take a criminologist to help us unpack, this entire nation has become a more violent nation. And there are lots of reasons for that, but Platte County is not immune to that violence. 9 vehicular homicides as well. Some of those drug-induced vehicular homicides where somebody was high while driving. I will tell you, we're seeing an increasing number of those sorts of cases, particularly due to marijuana use. Marijuana use cuts both ways for our office. It has decreased the number of misdemeanors we file because it's no longer a crime for somebody over the age of 21 to have a fairly significant amount of marijuana, which could have been either a misdemeanor or a felony prior to the passage of the constitutional amendment legalizing marijuana for recreational use in Missouri. But it cuts the opposite way when it comes to really serious issues, and some of those are vehicular homicides. The number of people that we've seen driving while high is increasing. The number of people we're seeing driving while high on marijuana is particularly increasing. So we're trading off some very simple cases to prosecute for much more complex and much more serious cases when somebody has died as a result of a driver who is either high or drunk while they're driving. So let me stop there and let you ask any questions you might have. Before I stop though, I want to thank this commission for what they've done for our office in terms of funding. We're able to handle these cases in large part because this commission has helped give the resources we need for our office. We've increased the number of staff, both assistant prosecutors and non-attorney support staff over the past several years, and that's due to this commission being willing to put law enforcement as its number one priority. I'm thankful of that. We're also about ready to move into new offices. This commission has used ARPA funding for a number of projects, but I'm particularly fond of what you've done to finally give our office adequate space. I tell people a lot that the very first presentation I gave to a county commission was in March of 2003, when I said to those commissioners, not you all, that our office had insufficient office space. It was inadequate. And it only took me 22 years to get adequate space. But again, that's due not really to me. That's due to you all. And I appreciate you finally being able to give us space that is appropriate for our office and frankly, space for growth in the coming years. That office will serve this county well for probably decades into the future. And so I thank you all for funding for personnel to help us handle these cases and funding for capital improvements for office space that are going to serve this county well. So now let me turn it over to you.
Well, the only reason we did that is so that we could get our offices back. Right?
and we're
I mean, we had ulterior motives. Yeah.
We are very happy to give them back to you.
Yeah, thank you. We look forward to having offices. Joe doesn't care. But
I'll have them for one day.
Dagmar and I do. We very much appreciate and value the services that you provide to Platte County citizens. We're very proud of our prosecutor's office and the work that you do. It's critically important for Platte County public safety. We understand that, and that's why we support your office the way that we do. So thank you for all that you and your staff do. Appreciate that. I do have a couple questions. On the misdemeanor numbers, now people think of misdemeanors as, mostly catch and release. Can you tell how much those crimes affect jail population? How many of those folks end up spending some time in jail?
Yeah, so many of those people spend usually just a short time in jail. They are more likely to be released on bond than our felony defendants who have committed serious crimes. For example, all of the homicides I've talked about, the vast majority of those folks, not all of them, some of the vehicular manslaughter cases, folks get bond. But in Platte County, our experience has been that if you kill somebody, if you commit other serious crimes, you're going to be held in custody prior to trial, which is appropriate. Not all counties do that, I will tell you. You look at other states, places like Chicago, Los Angeles, where even for serious felonies, murders, rapes, assaults, robberies, folks are being released the same day that they commit those crimes. We don't want that here in Platte County. We've got to have sufficient jail space. But misdemeanor defendants are much more likely to get by. But you have to understand, some of the misdemeanors are also serious violent cases. Domestic assault in the 4th degree is a misdemeanor. But I think we would all say that those cases are serious. And some of those people spend more time behind bars than other misdemeanors. What is driving our jail numbers, frankly, are the serious cases, the felony cases. And so while I welcome any reduction in misdemeanors that we filed, and again, part of that still has to do with the marijuana becoming legal for people over the age of 21 to possess. So we used to file lots of marijuana charges as misdemeanors and felonies, and we have none of those anymore. Most of those folks already were released on bond for those crimes. So while the decrease in jail population, or while the decrease in misdemeanors is marginally helpful to jail population, it's not really the driver of what our jail has to hold.
And 45% increase over 10 years in the felonies, that's 4.5% per year on average. I believe that exceeds our county's population growth rate, which may be closer to 3%, you know? I mean, that's 4% per year doesn't sound like a significant increase, but if it exceeds the population growth rate, that's an issue.
Yep, it is. And I will tell you, that's not unique to Platte County. As we all know, Platte County is a suburban ring county outside our urban core of Jackson County. And nationwide, what we're seeing is that the violence that used to be concentrated in the urban core is now spreading to suburban areas. I will tell you, during the first 12 years that I was prosecutor, we had zero, not a single, no drug-related homicides or even drug-related shootings. We just didn't have drug deals in Platte County back in those days. Now, in the last 10 years I've been prosecutor, we've got more than 24 shootings that have occurred during drug deals. Again, that's not unique to Platte County. Clay County is seeing the same thing. I will tell you that as I talk with my colleagues, both in the state of Missouri and nationwide, about what they're seeing, other colleagues who are in suburban counties like Platte County, they're seeing the same things. Again, that's a symptom of what's happening in culture just generally, that society has become more violent. Drug deals are becoming more common, even in suburban areas. You all probably remember the case that happened right here in the Wendy's parking lot, where during a drug deal, we allege, it's an ongoing case, we allege that somebody shot and killed 2 other people. All 3 of these people, we allege, involved in a drug deal. And people began pulling out guns. And I actually should say 1 person died, the other person very seriously injured, paralyzed for the rest of his life, currently in a vegetative state. So one death and 1 other person very, very seriously injured. So this is, I don't expect that trend to change. I would love it to, but this has more to do about changes in society than anything else. I expect that our crime rate for serious crimes will probably continue to outpace the growth, our population growth, just because of, again, a whole variety of reasons that it would take a criminologist to unpack. We're seeing this happen nationwide.
Thank you. Any further comments? Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate
Again,
your
it's my
comments.
great privilege to serve as Platte County's prosecuting attorney. I often say prosecution is a team sport. It is, because we work closely with our sheriff's department, with other police agencies, the Highway Patrol, all across Platte County. But it's really a team sport that involves you all as well. And so we appreciate the funding that you've given to law enforcement, both through the sheriff's department and my office. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here today to present that.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Any further comments from county office holders or staff? Any public comments? Commission? All right, let's wrap it up.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
A motion and a second to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Freighter?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
That motion carries 3-0. It is 10:32 a.m. and we are adjourned.